iniinsista rin ng iba na DND na lang ibibigay, yung mas senior na cabinet position. Yun yung parating sinasabi nila na gusto nila, no? At this is where things get very, very interesting, guys. So today, medyo pag-usapan natin na, not in a maritas way, but in a very analytic way, potential and pre-existing, let's just call it fault lines between the House of Duterte and House of Marcos. No, silang two dominant pillars of Philippine politics today. But things can always be different in 6 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 1 year down the road. Now, of course, speaking of good Machiavelli, diba? There's this whole thing about keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. But let me add, dapat dinagdag din dyan, but keep your real top rivals a little bit as away as possible, right? Yung sinasabi na there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, but permanent interests, dagdagan ko dyan, even interest changes at some point in time. Just before elections, the interest of the two camps was just to beat the liberal opposition as decisively as they could so that they have an electoral mandate. Once that hurdle was cleared, once you have a majority support of close to 60%, then the interest is something else. The interest is, let's show who is the boss. No? So, kumbaga, medyo may nakita tayo na bend the knee, Game of Thrones moves na nangyari just in the first week. Just days after elections. May mga ganyan na mga moves na nangyari. Yan. Yan mga... Yan. Mga Lannisters made a move. Nasa King's Landing na sila eh. Time to make a move. Boom, boom. Chaka, chaka. Right? So, it's very important in any coalition to make it clear who is the dominant partner in any coalition. And you would know that the situation was very different, very, very different last year. Just before elections, I would say up until November of last year, the situation was very, very different. I think back then, the Marcoses were still in a very vulnerable position. Sa aking palagay, kung hindi bumaba sa VP position si Sara Duterte, most likely Bongbong Marcos would have dropped out of the political race, presidential race altogether. Because I think it would have been very difficult na manalo ulit manalo si BBM if andun si Sara. And having lost 2016 elections, that would have been very, very tough. Kaya focus talaga ng mga Marcoses. Di ba si Amy sinasabi niya, ay, brother ko, wala siyang trabaho, yun yung gawin, puro mga ganun, di ba? Kausap si Sara, ganun, si Arroyo, si Martin, mga ganun. So, the situation was very, very different up until just November last year, di ba? But, now that the elections is over, it's a very, very different picture. Now, sabi ko nga, kung titignan mo dyan, tama. Dun sa numbers, mas mataas pang nakuhang boto, mas marami pang botong pumunta kay Sara Duterte kaysa kay Bongbong Marcos, right? I think a few 100,000 in difference. So, clearly you can see in that coalition who's bringing more cookies to the table, right? Who's bringing in more goodies. Kung picnic yan, lahat ng mga masarap na mga chopstick, mga ganon, beef steak, mga ganon, galing yan sa Solid South, di ba? At pagdating sa Solid South, this is not just Mindanao vote, which tends to go between 70 to 90% in favor of the Dutertes. Kasama din dyan yung Bisaya vote, right? The Visayan vote extends all the way from Mindanao to Cebu, and then of course to Manila, NCR, marami tayong mga kapatid ng Bisaya dito. So this base of support is massive. Probably we're talking about 15 to 20 million dyan sa 31 million votes ni Bongbong Marcos. Sara Duterte is responsible for that. Now, another proof na napakalakas si Sara Duterte talaga at siya yung linchpin ng winning dominant administration is Robin Padilla. Pag tinignan niyo si Robin Padilla, parati siyang katabi or parati siyang kasama or parati siyang kausap ni Sara Duterte. I think that was really, really what helped Robin Padilla to top this race. Si Tulfo was independent. He ran independent. He felt, bakit ko ba kailangan? Diba? At parati siyang number 1 dun sa mga kay, Lauren Legarda, sino ba si yung isang, diba? Kapatid ba ni Tony G ba yan isa? Basta, di ba, parang more mga celebrity, mga ganun. Although, of course, may pagka BBM support pa siyang ganun. Tuloy yung anak niya nagsulat dyan sa Rappler. Thought leader. Kung ano. But Robin Padilla, dikit siya parate eh. Parati siyang kasama ni Inday Sara. Panoorin mo yung mga vlogs nila doon. Meron siyang vlogs na Inday Sara, tapos may Sara without age. Kasama po natin ngayon si Robin Padilla. Tapos si Robin, kausap po ma'am, Inday, okay po kami dyan, ma'am. Happy kami dito. Mga ganon. Tapos parang mga ganon, chismisan lang. Boom! Nag-number 1 sa Senate. Ayan tayo eh. Ayan tayo eh. Dati, ang mga nagtatop sa Senate natin, mga Salonga. Katulad ni Salonga. Yung mga nag-grad school sa Yale and Harvard, fiscalizer, pro-human rights, democracy. You know, we had a whole generation of great leaders back then. Lahat yan, either nakulong, na-torture, pinatay, whatever, nung panahon ng martial law, etc. Some of them survived, but wala, hindi na na-build yung next generation kasi nasira yung ating institution. The whole generation was destroyed, no? Kaya nga, yung kalidad ng politika natin, even if bumalik yung demokrasya, kunyari, wala, ang baba ng kalidad ng demokrasya natin. Sira yung political party system by the time na baksak na yung Marcos dictatorship. But people don't know these things, right? They don't understand path dependency. They're just gonna blame who's the latest. They forget that a lot of things that happen na mali ngayon ay actually na-inherit natin from the past. And of course, kasalanan din ng mga sumunod na hindi inayos. But original sin, let's not forget about it. Okay? Now, so speaking of that, clearly, Sara Duterte yung dominant player dito sa UNI team. But the problem is, if there's one thing na pinakita ng mga iba't ibang administrations, including the Duterte administration, is you can reduce a vice president to a spare tire. Now, in fairness naman dito, hindi spare tire ang nangyari. Ang nangyari dyan is DepEd. Now, of course, the Department of Education is extremely important in terms of determining the future quality of our workforce, of our human capital, the moral upbringing of our children, the sense of history, etc., yung competitiveness ng market natin. But we know what kind of people usually lead DepEd, diba? Ito yung mga Brother Armin, etc., Briones, right? I mean, these are people who come from academic background, a lot of them with PhDs, people who have really solid academic background. They understand yung nitty-gritties ng birokrasya, ng edukasyon natin, yung anong kailangan ayusin dun sa sistema ng edukasyon natin, etc., etc. I'm just not sure Attorney Sara Duterte is perfectly tugma doon, no, swak doon sa mga requirements sa DepEd. I'm not questioning her credentials. I think she has her own credentials in governance, etc. I'm just saying DepEd, I don't know, maybe they're also not interested about it. But anyway, I think it was a very clear move by Bongbong Marcos, first days pa lang, to make it clear. Okay? I'm the boss. I decide who gets the top cabinet position. Department of Finance, Department of National Defense. Depends talaga. Depends. National Defense. Depende kung sino nandyan. Ayan, nagalit na. My God, meron. Department of National Defense. Okay. Department of National Defense. Department of Foreign Affairs, DFA. Kamusta naman dyan? Good Machiavelli, the professor. Hindi pa rin binigay sa kanya. Tsaka, ano pa yung isa? DILG, yun. Of course, nakuha ni Abalos, being the campaign manager in DILG, at least for now. Let's see if after 1 year, Isko or someone else will be entertained. But for now, at least DILG is cleared. Hindi pa rin clear yung tatlo dyan, no? Hanggang ngayon, hindi pa rin clear yung Department of Finance. Naklaro na ba? I mean, it's still, in fact, the markets are a little bit jittery. Kamusta naman dyan? Ano nangyari dyan? Diba? So I think it's very important for President-elect, no? Duly elected President-elect, presumptive president, or whatever gusto mong gamitin dyan, to make it clear ano yung top cabinet position niya. Now, interestingly, of course, nakita din natin, hindi lang si Sara Duterte, but the other strong woman in this picture, former President Arroyo, seemingly is not also in the happiest situation right now, realizing that she may not get the Speaker of the House she was looking for. I heard before na she could be the next Prime Minister if nagpalit tayo ng sistema. And I'll discuss that later on Federalism very shortly. No? All of those things. No? But no. Show who's the boss. So yun na nakita natin kay Marcos nung unang-una pa lang. Parang in fairness talagang Quick moves right away. Boom. No, leaving no room for speculation. Let's show who's the boss. Kaya sabi ko, never underestimate the Marcoses. Mga Lannisters yan. They've been there, they've done that more than anyone else in Philippine politics. So, okay. So, yon. Now, nalaman natin kahapon, indirectly, may mga umaalma. Diba? Yun ba yung term? Medyo, parang pumapalag is a bit different. So, ito yung nakita natin news kahapon. Ito tayo. The Mayor Rodrigo Rua Duterte National Executive Coordinating Committee. Ang haba ng pangalan. Mayor pa rin pala si Digong. Ulitin natin guys The Mayor Rodrigo Rua Duterte National Executive Coordinating Committee. Hey, kamusta dyan sa cousin natin Marco? Kamusta kayo dyan? Kamusta kayo dyan, sir? Ayan, balikan natin Davao muna tayo, guys. Balik tayo sa Davao. Mamaya tayo sa Marcos. The Mayor Rodrigo Rua Duterte na... Paano may acronym yan? MRRDNECC. MRRDNCC, okay. Calls for the appointment of presumptive Vice President SARA without H. Duterte as Defense Chief. Ayan, ito yung mga tinatawag natin na Department of National Defense. Depends sinong pwedeng pumunta doon. At ini-insist nitong MRRDNECC. MRRDENCC na more suitable kay... Akala natin, happy na eh. Happy na tong DepEd Secretary natin. Suitable for the Davao City Mayor. Sino mayor? Ang dami mayor eh. Mayor Rodrigo Rua. Tapos, suitable for Davao City Mayor. Si Sara. Like, ayan tayo eh. Ayan tayo guys. Ayan tayo eh. Ang gulo eh. Ang gulo. Okay. Ito pa. May instruction pa. Itong MRRDECC. They also want presumptive President Bongbong Marcos. Ba talaga may instructions to appoint some of his presidential contenders as cabinet members. Parang, una akong gusto sabihin, Kuya, who you? Una pag ako Marcos, parang, who you? Like, pangalawa, bakit meron pa rin... Bakit pa rin Mayor Rodrigo Rua? Presidente na, magre-retire na eh. Kasi, defunct na. Ano ba yan? Okay, yung unang-una ito. Pangalawa, Sir, meron pong restriction. Kung natalo ka sa election, hindi ka pwede ma-appoint ka agad. Maghintay ka pa ng isang taon. Ano to? Advance, deposit? Ayan tayo, gift certificate. Sir, natalo ka sa elections. Ito gift certificate mo. Ito yung cabinet position mo. Next year mo pwede i-claim yan, Huwag mo na yan. Pahinga lang kayo dyan. Ito. Ito sa'yo, Ito yung mga cabinet. Ito. Vic, pakibigay yung cabinet. Kasi, ayan tayo eh. Kuya, hindi po pwede ma-appoint ka agad. Hintay ng 1 year. Pangalawa, bakit magbibigay sino bang tinitawag ko dyan? Yung mga taga Davao na tumakbo or mga prodigong na tumakbo na sa presidential candidate, yung mga taga Mindanao? I mean, what's going on here, man? What's going on here? So, yun lang. Akala natin, ito na, pahinga na yung mga taga Department of National Defense. Okay, sige. So, mukhang si Secretary Lorenzana muna, and then baka si Gibo next year or some other general, someone who knows really what's Department of National Defense all about. In the meantime, let's see. Pero mukhang wala eh. Hindi na napagsabihan ng mga to eh. Talagang may instruction talaga sila. Ito talaga umupo, nagbigay ng press conference. Ulitin natin The Mayor Rodrigo Rua Duterte National Executive Coordinating Committee. Napakaganda po ang acronym yan. Ay. Tapos, ang dami mayor ng Davao. Sino ba? Di ba, basta ng mayor nga. Tapos mayor pa rin tawag sa Sara. Mayor pa rin si Rodrigo Duterte. Ayan tayo eh. Napakadami mayor. Isa lang syudad, daming mayor. Okay. So, yon. Malamang, sabihin ni Marcos, okay, noted. Mga ganun lang siguro sagot niya. Noted. Yan. Now, itong House of BBM and House of Marcos and House of Duterte, sabi na matagal na magiging yan. So, in the meantime, of course, they have been alliance. It has been an alliance of convenience, but it could turn into an alliance of inconvenience if they do not come up with the proper compromise on how to move forward. Now, before I go to the next point, and I think this is where a lot of tensions will come out, because I think the Duterte House, or House of Duterte, wants more decentralization. Pagdating sa Marcoses, alam natin, generally, mas gusto nila siguro ang centralization and strengthening of power of the national state. Now, there could be compromise down the road, but I'll talk about that very shortly pagdating sa issue ng federalism. Pero balikan muna natin ito, guys. Itong issue ng... Sige, balikan ko muna si Marcos. Ganito kasi. Muni ako kasi umulan na eh. Ganito kasi. Ang dilemma kasi ni Marcos ngayon is he has multiple dilemmas. Unang-una, you see, Marcos is coming in amid an economic crisis, which is very different from the situation of Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte. Nung nanalo si Duterte noong 2016, yung economy po natin, at least on the macroeconomic level in terms of key indicators, ay maganda. Maganda yung growth rates, maganda yung fiscal situation natin, yung fiscal deficit natin hindi ganun kalaki, yung debt to GDP ratio natin hindi ganun kalaki. Ngayon po, napakaiba yung sitwasyon. Pagpasok pa lang ni Bongbong Marcos next month, guys, mahihirapan siya dahil ang laki na ng utang ng Pilipinas. Lumaki ang utang natin sa panahon ni Tatay Digong, right? Si Tatay Digong kasi nag-benefit siya dun sa mga economic reforms ng panahon ni Arroyo at saka President Aquino. Ayan, alam mo yung mga barangay chairman style, pag kinausap ng kakati-kati, gano'n. Ayan, kati-kati tayo dito. Okay, hindi ganito kasi, guys. President Marcos is gonna have a much more circumscribed policy space. Ito classroom learn this term. Policy space. Alright? Ano yung policy space? Ito yung room for maneuver mo. Kasi, general ka, kunyari, bigyan kita ng example. Ikaw general ka, ako general. Ikaw may artillerist ka, ako wala. So yung room of maneuver, yung options ko to wage a war are different. So the thing kasi is, noong 2016, nung pumasok si Rodrigo Roa Duterte, mayor, president, the options were far bigger and far wider for him dahil napakaganda yung key economic indicators natin. Tapos meron pa tayong arbitration victory, etc. So meron din siyang leverage options dun sa international front, which made China a little bit too friendly to him. Na parang, huy, wag mo i-raise yan. The situation is very different for Marcos. Marcos comes in, debt to GDP ratio has been skyrocketing. Budget deficit natin, lumalaki. Meron tayong issues dito sa foreign policy, yung mga pangako ng China hindi naman natupad. So it will be also hard for him to go for a hard pivot towards China, right? And then, of course, there's the polarization, there's the Marcos baggage, and yes, you could try to dismiss Lenny, konti lang sila, but 15 million votes is not konti. Yes, 31 million votes is a lot, but 15 million votes is not konti. Alright? So, Marcos is coming in here, and then, the other thing I'm noticing here is that bakit parang hindi pa rin na-appoint yung mga top cabinet position? And one sense we get is maybe Marcos is trying to really build a unity cabinet, meaning people from iba't ibang administration, including yung mga administration ng mga liberals, etc., to create the most inclusive, representative cabinet possible. But I won't be surprised some of these people are having second thoughts kasi may baggage eh. May baggage eh. Maka-cancel sila, di ba? May cancel culture tayo. Kung nag-work ka sa Marcos administration, pwede ka tawagin kang enabler, sellout, etc. So that's probably one possibility. And we know so far, the market has not responded very well to a Bongbong Marcos presidency precisely because of that reputation and baggage. Now, in fairness naman, kay duly elected president-elect, presumptive president, mamaya na tayo kay duly elected Vice President Leni Robredo. Okay, dito muna tayo sa duly elected president-elect, presumptive president, yan. Bongbong Marcos, pagdating sa kanya, in fairness naman to him, he said, judge me by my actions, don't judge me by my past per se. Although, of course, conveniently, when he was running, he used the past of his father or whatever version of it to say, ako yung magiging magaling na president, etc. But anyway, now andito na, tapos ng elections, ito, nakuha mo na yung Malacanang. But the next point is, okay, so ano yung mga strategy mo? But you see, Bongbong Marcos has another problem, which is also unique to him. We haven't had this for a long time. He's the first pro-incumbent victor in the presidential elections. Sa, dati po kasi, bawat presidential election, for a long time, 2016, 2010, etc. Kung titignan mo, they were all a rejection of the previous president. No? Estrada 1998. Well, in the case of Arroyo, may pagka-wrinkle in the picture because nag-EDSA dos, but nonetheless, she was kind of running against Arab's legacy and essentially coming to power on the ashes of the Arab administration. And then Aquino ran. When he ran for president, he was running against Arroyo. And then Duterte, when he ran, he was running against Aquino. So, anong benefit mo dyan? The benefit there is, if something goes wrong, pwede mo i-blame sa dating administration. Diba? Every time something went wrong under Aquino, sasabihin niya, ito kasi yung nangyari panahon ni Arroyo, inaayos pa natin. Tignan mo, even yung last zona ni President Aquino, si Arroyo pa rin yung biniblame. Now, I'm not going to debate on the merits of that, but we know a lot of damage was done to our institutions throughout the 10 years, and the same way that there was a lot of damage done to our institutions in the 20 years of Marcos' presidency. But, now, hindi magagawa ng openly si BBM ngayon kay Pangulong Duterte. Medyo magiging mas komplikado yung picture. Kasi, talagang, nag-limit talaga yung policy options ni BBM ngayon eh. Dahil sa lumalaki yung ano natin, yung debt level natin, yung budget deficit natin. So, yung mga projects na gustong gawin ni Bongbong Marcos, he has to be much more circumscribed kasi mas konti na yung budget, mas konti yung borrowing space, yung policy space na tinatawag natin. But he cannot openly blame Tatay Digong or mismanagement, etc. My hunch is they'll try to find a way around it to say, let's just blame pandemic, let's just blame pandemic. But a lot of our neighbors are going to recover faster and faster. Some of them have already fully recovered. Vietnam's economy barely even contracted, right? It actually grew in 2010 just as the Philippine economy contracted by 10%. So if you look at all of those factors, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for Marcos to also play this game of blaming the previous administration because previous administration is the tatay of your current vice president. That's why your current vice president cannot be too strong because that will also limit your room for political maneuver, right? So it makes sense for Marcos, right, to create some space between himself and the Dutertes so that he can also give himself some options that if indeed he needs to, he can blame a bit the previous administration kung medyo kulang or kapos yung mga resources na kailangan niya to push for some decisive reform. Kasi ganito eh, tignan mo yung speech ni Bongbong Marcos eh. Parang gusto niya sabihin, hindi ko kayo walang mabibigo sa atin, di ba? And because Marcos Jr. understands the expectations are really high on him. 31 million guys, grabe yun, di ba? Ito yung sinasabi niya. Hinahanap ko yung quote eh, Marcos. Meron siyang sinabi na parang hindi kayo mabibigo, etc. Kasi alam ko, nape-pressure talaga sila. Now, I don't know yung I don't know kung Aman Polo ba yan? Mukhang may mga nagre-relax naman sa Aman Polo. So hopefully they're rejuvenated, they're refreshed. So pwede na sila mag-focus. Makano sa Aman Polo? $6,000 per night. Yung pinakamura daw na parang banana leaf lang na may tutulugan mo. Ibang klase. Pero if you have rich friends, then libre yung Aman Polo. Sorry guys, hanggang Ibiza lang ako. Diba? Diba kasi hanggang Ibiza lang ako eh. Itong mga to Aman Polo level eh. So, hindi ko ma-reach. Now, the other thing is, we don't also have a very clear, sige, hanapin ko yung, meron ako nito eh. Hanapin ko yung quote na yan. Let's not waste time. Let's go straight to this. Ang issue kasi dito is, the other thing we want to understand is, okay, ni-raise mo yung expectation ng tao. Majority ang bumoto sa'yo. Almost twice the number ni Duterte ang bumoto kay Bongbong Marcos. From 16 to 31 million, right? Konti na lang, magta-32 million pa siguro, hindi twice na yan. Ang laki eh. So, nasa sense ni Bongbong Marcos talaga yung pressure ngayon. Ang tanong, paano mo naman ma-ensure na hindi mabibigo. I mean, for instance, meron yung proposal, yung bigas ba yan, gawin 20 pesos ba yan? Bigas yun, di ba? Eh, pati yung mga admin economist na nga sila, Joy Salceda, sabi na hindi posible yan. Ano, inutriban price natin yung ano. So, yan ang problema kasi na mga laman yung pangako during elections. Ngayon na, eto na, daming bumoto sa'yo, wala nang tala na gold. Anong gagawin natin ngayon? So, if expectation management will be a big problem for this administration. And at the same time, hindi naman pwede lahat idadaan na lang sa TikTok at saka mga performative social media ek-ek. Marami tayong kasama dyan na tamad, ayaw mag-research, nadadala lang sa mga TikTok at saka mga bola online. Pero maraming tao naman, ma-feel naman talaga nila kung wala talaga nangyaring progress na significant. Masa-sense mo naman yan eh. You can just fake things just so much, right? Although, let's see, I'm never gonna underestimate mga farms and all of that. But the reality is, Marcos has to come up with a very concrete plan. Paano mo makakamit itong mga pangako mo sa mga tao? Ang daming bumoto sa'yo at ang gusto nila, yung parang halos magical eh. Yung biglang hot yung presyo ng bigas, biglang pwede nang ganito, pwede nang biglang maging Singapore na tayo. You know what I'm saying? Hindi naman siya nag 6 months. Hindi naman siya nag 3 to 6 months style ni Tatay Digong na pero still alam natin guys, come on, tanungin yung mga supporters ni ayan, yung mga nagsasabi mga BBM supporters, aminin nyo, diba? Ang expectation nyo, boom, ayusin na to within 2-3 years, dapat andun na tayo. Hindi talaga mangyayari yan. This is physics, guys. Hindi mo maano yan, diba? Ayan na naman tayo Hoy, Urik, I don't know if you're real or fake account, umayos ka. Tumingin ka muna sa mirror bago ka magsalita, okay? Umayos ka. Ano nga? Okay, nang bahala dyan sa mga troll dyan. Wala kaming oras dito. Hush, basura. Alis kayo dyan. Walang basura dito. Okay. Now, let's go to the next point, okay? Now, if you can't take proper analysis, get the hell out of my page. We don't need you. We have hundreds of thousands of followers. We have millions of engagement. We don't need basura, okay? Get out of here. Okay. Now, let's go back, guys. Ayan, classroom. Ayan, tahimik na classroom. Andiyan yung class president. Pakilabas. Ayan, nadali na sa principal's office yan. Yan. Dapat may ganyan pasaway Walang niya. You don't mess on my page. This is my territory, okay? Bend the knee. Bend the knee. Yan. Now, dito tayo sa next. Now, this is where also the other issue comes in. Now, yes, as I've argued, shoe. Hindi yung shoe, Imelda shoe, yung shoe lang na SHOO. Baka mamaya ayun na. Hoy, Urik! Walang gagawa ng fake account, yung pangalan pa lang, obvious na. Pero para patulang pa rin kita. Kahit anong ko fake account ka, papatulang kita. You know what? Because lions have to roar once in a while so that the hyenas know they're just hyenas. Alright? That's a very important thing, guys. That's a lesson in life. Once in a while, the lion has to roar. Otherwise, the hyenas might get some ideas. Nakita niyo sa mga sa mga National Geographic, yung mga hyenas, gumagano sila, iniiritan nila yung lion, tapos nabubisit yung lion. Gagano, tapos wala na. Once in a while, guys, we have to do that roar. Kaya alam ko, love niya ako Kasi alam niya, palaban ako Hindi ako I'm not gonna be nice, I'm not gonna be nice. You troll me on my page? How dare you? You excuse me, alright? You don't do that to me. I'm looking at you, okay? Alright. Kaya alam ko, love niya ako Kasi nakikita niyo, hindi tayo dito Yung mga kilala sa atin, alam nila silang Alaskador. You don't troll Alaskador, okay? I troll the troll, okay? Yun lang. Alright. Balikan natin. Ayan, wala na si Urik. Nasaan ka na, Urik? Nagbago ka ng account? Yung second account mo ngayon ilalabas mo? Uy, kumita siya ng malaki. Meron siya ng live na response. Uy. Alam ko, medyo mas malaking bayad pag-respond mo sa kanya. Meta live. Na meta yung budget nila dyan. Yan. Okay. Now, we're just explaining ano yung magiging challenges for incoming President Marcos. So, we're just trying to be as fair as possible here. Okay? Now, as I said, medyo maging more limited yung policy space for incoming President Marcos. So, I think expectation management will be something that he has to concentrate on. Okay? We're very serious about this, guys. Come on. If you're you have no intellectual maturity or emotional maturity, get the hell out of here. I don't need you, okay? We're here to have rational discussion, okay? Okay. Yan, pinagalitan na, pinagalitan na. Ayan na. Wala na, wala na. Okay, okay na. Tama na, tama na. Ano, nasa principal's office na. Sir, kalmado ko lang. Hindi na siya nasa principal's office. Okay nang bali dyan, ha? Oh, sige. Alright. Okay, okay. Okay na daw. Okay. Balikan natin. I mean, guys, if you don't want to believe me, ito, tingnan niyo for instance. Ito, so, ito, for instance. Look at this news, guys. The markets are already telling. Let's get clear certain things, okay? Guys, everything we do here is based on proper analysis, research, and everything like that. Now, which brings in the third issue, the last issue I want to discuss today. I don't want to waste too much of your time. Ayan na, pinagalitan na natin yung troll. Number 3, this is where I think things also will get pretty complicated. Now, alam natin na may mga problema talaga dito sa ating saligang batas, dito sa ating constitution. Maraming kulang. As I said, 6 years single term is too long for a bad president, too short for a good president. I'm okay with 4 years. If you're good in the 4 years, you get re-elected, then you have the legacy years. Or you can even go more dramatic, go Indonesia, 5 years, 5 years. Kaya ngayon si Jokowi, marami siyang mga gawa sa Indonesia, and he happens to be actually a good president, relatively good president. At yun ang wala tayo, Jokowi-style president. Wait lang, I have to finish na rin pala. Meron akong isa pang gagawin. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind, guys. No, the other one is, of course, I mean, there was no restrictions on political parties, walang enabling law, meron lang provisions in general, pero walang restrictions on party system, walang anti-defection laws. I can go on and on and on. Now, dito sa federalism, I'll be very quick about this. Let's have a proper lecture on federalism. Kasi I want to be fair about this. This is a complicated issue, multi-layered issue. Ganito kasi, in theory, everything is in theory because, you know, you can have parliamentary system in Zimbabwe, but if your institutions are messed up, it's not going to create you, I don't know, it's not going to give you Sweden, all right? It doesn't work that way. Walang magical solution dito. You can be federal, I don't know, you know, like Nigeria or Brazil, and it doesn't even give you America, which is another messed up system, right? So, wag kayo maniwala dun sa mga sabi, hey, pag ganyan tayo, automatic ganyan. They don't know what the heck they're talking about, okay? Karamihan mga blogger na yan, zero background in any social science, zero peer-reviewed, high-level publication whatsoever. So, joke sila as far as we're concerned. Nonetheless, I understand meron clamor for some sort of at least amendment. I believe in some sort of amendment in the Constitution. I believe that we have to have some intelligent adult conversation, possibly shifting to parliamentary system, but we have to make sure the ground is ready for that. And also, we should not exaggerate the possible benefits and also look at the possible flaws. Nonetheless, if we shift to federalism, which is a different issue dun sa parliamentary, you can go parliamentary federal, but presidential federal, mukhang that's the yun yung prevailing preference, at least under Duterte, no? Let me keep it this way. In federalism, you're gonna essentially give more autonomy to regional governments and all. The problem in the case of the Philippines is that your regional governments are already semi-dominated by political dynasties and warlords. In a situation whereby you weaken the hold of the national government, Imperial Manila, on the provinces, who do you think will be more powerful on those provinces? Ordinary people? Or the warlords and political dynasties who are already very dominant there? There will be also the prime ministers of their state legislatures. Who do you think will be that? Do you think ordinary people? No. So there's a very high possibility, high risk that if we go federalized, you even further strengthen the hold of dynasties and warlords on a lot of provinces across the country. So in theory, you can say, oh, federalism, Manila, blah, 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 blah. And then, in federalism, Manila will still stay as the most developed part of the country. If ikaw an investor, you will go more to Manila than anywhere else because there's already the concentration of resources and human capital there. Now, if you want to get an idea about it, look at the US, for instance. Let's say Kansas versus New York. If you're top investors, do you go to Kansas or do you go to New York? Or do you go to California? You go to California. You go to New York. You only go to Kansas if it's like an extractive industry. But if it has a high-tech investment, stock markets, IPO, whatever, you go to New York. If it's a tech investment, etc., you go to California or you go to Texas for that matter. You go already to more developed places. So the advantages will not go. Like, if tomorrow federal tayo paggising natin, Manila will still be way more developed than the rest of the country. And it's very possible that there'll be even more human capital shifting from other parts of the country to here. More investment will even be more concentrated in here. Not to mention, pag tignan mo yung revenues, there was a study by DILG. This is pre-Tatay DILG. Ito yung mga legit studies that many provinces, including sa Davao, they're not sufficiently capable of raising enough revenues on their own. Kasi sabihin ko, oh, bahala ka, you're on your own. Can you raise enough revenues? Do you have the proper bureaucracy for that? Do you have the strong tradition of tax collection, etc.? And then, paano naman yung mga nagtatrabaho sa mga probinsya but they're paid by national government salary grade because they're working for national government agencies? The moment na maging LGU yan, yung sahod nila ibababa. It will no longer be the national government bureaucracy rate, it will be a local rate. Anong gagawin ng mga nurses and doctors yan? It's very possible a lot of them will just go to the bigger cities so that they get a better payment. Do you get what I'm saying? And lastly, we already have a local government code, we have devolution, we have the concentration, we have so many other things. Ito yung problema sa Pilipinas. We come up with something, we don't implement it properly, we throw the baby with the bathwater, get a new baby, then put the bathwater. I mean, this is ridiculous. There's no follow-through, there's no proper analysis of the status quo. And as they say in math, the first thing you have to do in math, when you're going to solve a math problem, first understand the nature of problem before jumping into solving the mathematical problem. The same thing applies to politics. All right? Now, just very quickly, we can talk about this more, guys. As I said, parliamentary, I'm open to discussion. Federalism in the Philippines? I don't know. If you're a warlord dynasty in provincia, you like federalism. You like federalism. I'll discuss that more later on, okay? Not in this lecture, another lecture. But let me end on this point. My sense is that Dutertes would like federalism because this means more autonomy for them in Mindanao, less intervention in Metro Manila. I think that will be a lot of solid South advocacy. But Bongbong Marcos, I think, just like his father, would want a strong republic and a strong state. And that means strengthening of the national government institution so that it can make sure that we have a streamlined, harmonized vision for the entire country. That's the sense I have with Bongbong Marcos. It is true that Bongbong Marcos comes from the north. He also comes from provincial politics background. But they have a national vision. And a strong republic, in many ways, also means a robust, centralized national government. At least this is the sense that we have. All right? Okay. Now, that's where I can see tensions once we move forward with constitutional change or cha-cha. I think that's where solid North and solid South will not necessarily be very solid uniting with each other. Now you get my point. Okay? Let's keep it there. Sorry, I have to go to my next movement. Medyo na-distract lang tayo classroom doon sa mga pasaway. Please, next time pag may pasaway, bahala kayo dyan kasi I don't want to be distracted. Sorry. You have to protect me, guys. You have to protect me because the lion cannot roar every day. Baka masira yung vocal cords niya. Okay? The lion has to protect his vocal cords. Ano, nice hair. Alam, lion di ba? Kung parating roar, di wala na. Ano ka? Askal, di ba? The lion roars once in a while. Kaya andyan kayo. Okay? Bahala kayo dyan. Kasi I'm checking your comments, guys. Kung may matino kayong comments and all, I mean, lahat naman kayo may matinong comments. But I mean, like, meron kayong point of clarification, etc. I respond right away. Okay? Now, sorry, I have to go. I have another appointment. Don't worry, guys. Patikim lang yan. Mas pwede natin pag-usapan na mabuti. Now, you want to know more details about my analysis? Don't worry, guys. Just go to Google. Alam niyo yung Google, di ba? G-O-O-G. Okay. Type Haydarian, Federalism, stuff will come out. Forbes magazine, etc. I've written for all of them on this issue. Again, this is just preliminary. Okay, we can discuss about this more. And speaking of trolls, no. Troll the trolls. Have fun. Enjoy it. Natuwa ako doon. To be honest, I enjoy trolling the trolls. It's good. I'm not gonna sit down there and take trolls. I'm gonna troll the troll, especially if you're in my territory. Okay? You make the hyena know that he's just a hyena. Alright? You're just a hyena. Okay? Don't dare to question the lion. Okay? Ayan. Para mga Instagram. The lion doesn't bother with the opinions of hyena. I beg to disagree. The lion makes a lesson out of a hyena so the rest of the jungle knows he is the lion. That is my Instagram self-help motivational quote. Okay? Yan. Boom! Let's go, guys. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat. Mag-check pa ako ng papers, guys. Sorry, guys. Teacher talaga. Dami tayong responsibility.